And welcome back to Capitol Tonight once again. My next guest had a much easier time this election year. Assemblyman Adriano Espaillat cruised to victory in the Democratic primary, grabbing just over 50% of the vote in a four-way contest. And then he went on to easily win in the general election. Moving from the Assembly to the Senate is actually generally considered a step up, but it also could mean a step from the majority to the minority in this case. Senator-elect Espaillat is joining me from New York City tonight. Senator-elect, how are you?
Well, very well. Thank you, Liz, for inviting me to your program.
It's great to see you, and we will be seeing much more of you soon as you get back to Albany. I understand that you are headed back actually this week. There's going to be a freshman orientation?
Yes, I'm a freshman once again. After being in the legislature for 14 years, I once again find myself in the freshman class. I don't know what kind of games I'm going to be exposed to.
Yeah, right. Well, it is the Senate after all. So do you have any idea what exactly they're going to be doing? Is it just the freshmen, and where is this taking place?
Yeah, I believe it's just the freshmen, and you know, there are some differences in the rules of the governing both the Assembly and the Senate, and it's going to take place in Albany, so I'm looking forward to it. Well, I want to make sure that I go in knowing what the differences are with regards to the rules and other matters that are important.
Well, one of the differences is that because the conferences are smaller, everyone actually manages to get a committee. And forgive me, in the Assembly you didn't have a committee, is that correct?
No, actually I did have a committee. I chaired Veteran Affairs for a little bit over a year. And just this last session, I was given the chairmanship of the Small Business Committee.
Right.
So
that's
yeah.
Right. How many years had it been for you that you were in the chamber and didn't have a committee?
Oh, I had to wait over a decade, yes.
Right, okay.
Over 10 long years to get a standing committee. Before that, I had a task force of New Americans. I had the Commission of Science and Technology and a few other entities, but not a standing committee as such.
So do you have your eye on something in particular in the Senate?
Well, you know, I really enjoy the work that I did during a very short period of time with small business. So, you know, I would like to stay in that area, perhaps economic development. I know that jobs and economic development are going to be key issues to be debated in the upcoming years. And they're very important to the district that I represent, the 31st Senatorial District, and I would like to be in that arena, in the economic development, small business, jobs arena.
Here's the problem, though. We don't know if you'll be a ranking member on that committee, assuming you get your wish, or a chairman, because we don't know which side is going to end up in the majority. How would it be for you if you had spent over a decade in the majority in the Assembly and then end up taking this step up to the Senate but end up in the minority?
Well, I mean, it will be a shift in my framework of thinking. I mean, I've always, I am an elected official that comes from a background of being combative and being sort of like the disenfranchised community representative, first Dominican American in the state legislature and across the United States. So I do have the tools to be a minority member, if you may. But being in the majority for the last 14 years, I came very close to knowing how important that is and the kind of resources that it can bring to your district. But also the ability for you to get your work done is easier, obviously, in the majority than in the minority. But, you know, I have the tools and know-how to go back 10 years, you know, and reach into my soul and be combative if I have to, yes.
Do you have any feeling on how the Senate Democrats, when you were sitting from afar, you didn't need very much assistance from them because you pretty much ran, in the general election, you ran almost unopposed. You had an opponent, but really, in terms of the enrollment, it wasn't much of a contest. Do you think that the Senate Democrats did what they had to do in the elections? Because now we find ourselves in with these three cliffhanger races and the possibility that they will not retain the majority.
Well, hindsight is 20/20, and you know, I always say, because I'm a baseball fan, you could always stand in the batter's box and say, you know, that CC Sabathia is throwing the pitch at 100 miles per hour, or you know, that batter should have bunted the ball or maybe moved the runner up to second base. But standing right there in the batter's box and watching that ball come 100 miles per hour to you, it's a whole different ball game. So I'm not going to second guess anything that was done. I mean, you know, we're still counting votes. It's not over till it's over, and every vote should be counted. And We have enough experiences already from Florida to New York now, where we know that these races could be very close and that every individual vote should be counted and that every individual vote is very important. So, I'm not going to second guess the strategy that was put into place to keep the majority, but, I am comfortable that hopefully at the end of this process we'll still be in the majority.
Andrew Cuomo, the governor-elect, wants this to be over. He asked the chief judge, Jonathan Littman, to expedite all of these cases. He would like it to be over. If there is a full recount, which is something that has been discussed in at least 2 of those races, if that goes forward, it could really drag on through January or perhaps even longer. Do you think that every vote being counted is more important than having an answer about who's in charge so Andrew Cuomo can get his agenda done?
I think that we should never choose an agenda over disenfranchising the voters. And I think that the voters deserve to know that their vote counted and that government took that count seriously. So that, I am optimistic that we may be able to complete all of this within the framework that was established by Judge Littman, and that the people of the state of New York could have a government ready and set to go by January 1st. But I don't think that ever should we in public office or politicians should pick an agenda, one that may be very close to my heart, over the right of someone's vote to be counted. I think that that's not very democratic, if you may.
So even if it does go through January, that it lasts longer than perhaps Andrew Cuomo would prefer, you think that that would be the best course of action if it looks like some of these really should be recounted?
I think that the best course of action is to really count every single vote and to ensure that the affidavit ballots are counted, military votes are counted, that emergency votes are counted, that anywhere where there is a discrepancy or a question as to whether or not the process was efficient and transparent, that those questions are answered, so that voters continue to have confidence in the electoral process. We want to regain the confidence of our constituents throughout the state of New York. One of the best steps to take forward and do is to really regain their trust by ensuring that the electoral process is a transparent one, one that is verifiable, and that they can feel reassured that their participation in it was counted and taken seriously.
Assuming that you do get back into the majority, will you be supporting John Sampson as majority leader?
Right now, he is my majority leader, and I'm leaning in that way. But let's wait and see what happens. But right now, he is the majority leader, and he's someone that I'm supporting at this point.
Well, right. Actually, that's my bad. He is a Democratic conference leader. Of course, the majority leader is Pedro Espada. They split that position, and I do want to ask you about that. But do you think would it be different if, in fact, the Democrats end up in the minority? I'm not sure that John Sampson actually wants to be minority leader, but if he did, and the Democrats had lost the minority, do you think he'll pay a price, the majority rather, you think he'll pay a price for that?
Well, I don't know. Pelosi is looking to stay in the House of Representatives,
right.
And she said that she wants to stay, and 2 years from now, the scenario may be completely different. And with a presidential candidate at the top of the ticket, I think that if we were to be in the majority, we'll be in a good position, given the close margin of majority that there is at the Senate, which may be a 2-member, if not a tie, conference. That we will get back there as Democrats to be the majority conference in the state Senate. So the question then becomes, do we want someone with experience that is tested, that is battle tested, or do we need to bring in a rookie?
And you don't have a feeling one way or the other about that?
Well, right now, no. This is 2 years down the road. But as of now, I stick with John Sampson, and we'll wait and see what happens. But he has every right to aspire to be the minority leader if he likes. Pelosi is doing that in Congress, so he's not splicing atoms here. This is not something that's unprecedented.
So back to this issue of the majority leader, what you could say a lot of things about Pedro Espada. He's not coming back, of course. Gustavo Rivera is. However, he was the highest ranking Latino member in the chamber. He was the first, actually, to hold a legislative leadership role. And there have been some people, most notably Ruben Diaz Sr., who's an ally of his, who say we should really have the elevation of someone else. Now, how do you feel about that?
Well, my good friend, the Reverend Diaz, has his point of view on it. And I know that he feels that, in fact, having someone there was really of critical importance to the Latino community, and that, in fact, whatever new scenario brings up leadership in the future, that it should include another Latino at that level or even a higher level. But, you know, I happen to think that perhaps everything that happened last year also contributed to the high level of distrust and disenchantment amongst the constituents that we serve. And that, in fact, what we need to do is to bring back and build the confidence that they need to have on us. And one way to do that, perhaps, is to consolidate the power and to make sure that we have one leader. And that leader may be the best leader, and we will decide amongst ourselves who that leader may be. But obviously, you know, to just say that we're going to have a Latino here, or you know, an African American here, or white here, and sort of like play it that way, it doesn't satisfy the needs and also the quest of thousands and millions of New Yorkers that want a functional New York State legislature, a functional Senate. So, you know, I'm looking more at the ability of the leader, what he or she may bring to the table, whether that leader could be a consensus builder, whether that leader could really pull us out of the situation that we find ourselves in, which is one that is not very favorable to any legislator in the state legislature.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Senator-elect Adriano Espaillat. We will be seeing you soon. Congratulations on your win.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much.